I mean, when I found your page, I was like, wow, this person's so amazing. Like the kind of way that you're really clear about what you're offering on your page. And I feel like it's rare to find a person who is offering something beyond just like, here's some tattoos. You know?
Oh, I think, I mean, first, I appreciate you saying all that. I think well, I've been tattooing for just about 7 years. And for the first couple of years, I don't think I was clear. And I remember sitting down with a friend who um, is in the social service field. And she was like, are you doing what you want to be doing now that you changed careers? 17 years in the social service field before that. And I was like, well, sometimes. She's like, how about you just be more clear about what it is that you want to do? And I initially was just like, well, I don't know if I have any room to do that. She was like, I mean, the worst that can happen is you get feedback and then you will learn from that and you will grow from that. And it made a huge difference, right? I mean, I try to be clear about who I am and who I am not, and then learn as I mess up along the way.
Sometimes it takes that prompt, right? From like the friend says the right thing at the right moment. And you're like, now my whole life is going to be different.
It was huge. It was a huge difference. And before, when I was in the social service setting, I was working with like groups of people. And I loved that so much, but I could tell over time. I mean, I think I actually like experienced some, I don't know if I had like a full mental breakdown, but it was something, like near that. And I could tell that I wanted to work more one-on-one with people. And so I think that helped me to have more clarity around like, what I wanted to do, and also like listening or trying to listen to the needs of what people are asking for. I just kind of check in with myself and try to have like an anonymous feedback. I don't know, like QR code type of thing, so people can give feedback and let me know like how am I doing? Am I missing the mark? What are some of your needs? Because some of it did start off as me wanting to work with scarring. If people had scarring around, could be, self-harm or, domestic violence or anything like that. That still happens. Like people still come to see me for things like that, but also realize, of course, that scarring isn't always a visible thing, And so I think things started to like unfold from there as people spoke more about kind of what their needs or their hopes were. And that made sense to me to sort of try to stay connected in that way, anything from, just, it could be a scar cover up. It could be a name cover up. It could be a marking. Sometimes I've met with folks who have been trafficked, and they've been marked and wanting to, go over those things and cover those up or change the way that those look. Sometimes it's botched surgery, but sometimes it's literally just a reconnecting with the body. Sometimes it's memorials. And lately I've been trying to focus a lot more on grief work as well.
Micah here just wanted to jump on and give a trigger warning. This conversation contains mentions of domestic violence, mental health issues, death, poverty, discrimination, grief, and trauma. Please do take care of yourselves. If you need to not listen, go ahead and skip this one. Hello, my darlings. Welcome to another episode of Ink Medicine Podcast. We are here in the studio. It's Thursday, May 25th. I am with Sun Medicine Inc., also known as Sarah. Would you please introduce yourself?
I will. Hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Sun. My practice with tattooing is called Sun Medicine, and I use she, her pronouns. I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan. and I'm a single mom of two, and I am nearing 50 years of age.
I first saw Sarah's page not too long ago. It was,
Mm,
what, about a month, I would say.
I think, yeah.
I believe you said something, commented on a podcast episode, like release post. And I
Mm.
went to your page and I was just like, my people, this is my people.
Oh.
And so for the last month, we just kind of, liked each other's pictures and chatted a little bit. And I set up this conversation because I didn't want to let the momentum go.
Mm.
So you said you've been tattooing for 7 years, you said?
I have, yeah. Yep. All in Grand Rapids. I've been at 3 different shops. I got an apprenticeship at this queer woman run shop in town, which was rare at the time for this town, anyhow, which I'm really thankful for. The woman was familiar with my work. I'm a printmaker. I've been printmaking for, oh boy, it's been close to 30 years now. Mostly relief work, linoleum mostly.
And that
Some
was
silk screening.
was that like your career prior to tattooing?
Hmm. That was so. I went to school. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in printmaking and photography from approximately 77 years ago.
What school did you go to?
I went to University of Toledo.
Okay.
So I
I
was
went
living
to
in Ohio.
I went to school in Ohio too. I went to Antioch College.
You went to Antioch.
Yeah.
Oh, yep. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, it was really something. But University of Toledo was a pretty inexpensive at the time state school. I think I was paying like 5 or 6 thousand a year. Not that that's nothing, but I
Hmm.
failed out of the first year and a half. And I think, I don't tell my kids, I don't push college on my kids at all. It's not a value system that I have really. But I think for me, that time in my life, I think I needed to do something, or I'm pretty sure I would have died shortly, there within. So just happened that was one of the things. And so I was studying printmaking from there. What ended up happening was I finished that degree and felt pretty disillusioned with, even though it was a state school and they had an art program, it just felt, I don't know, like relatively self serving. And I just didn't connect with most of the folks there and the programming, some for sure. And the creative process was beautiful, but just there weren't like fits there. I couldn't figure out how to make that fit with just, working in the community at that time. And so I moved up to Grand Rapids to be near my aunt, one of my favorite humans in the world. And she was like, you know what? You could do like AmeriCorps for a couple of years and just chill out. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, hadn't really heard much of AmeriCorps. Now I know what I know, and I didn't before. But and ended up mostly working at a drop-in art studio for folks who it was in a neighborhood here called Hartside. It's situated right close to the downtown area, like butts up right against it. And the drop-in studio was for folks primarily. They were houseless, co-occurring issues. And so folks could just come in and make artwork. There's no cost to anything. We had a sign-in sheet, but it was like you could literally make up a name every day. It didn't matter. I think we were just trying to keep track of like how many people came in, so we knew how many supplies to like secure. And we would buy supplies or dumpster dive or whatever for stuff. And I just did that for a really long time. I would continue printmaking at the time, and then after a while, we at the gallery or at the studio. The place next door went out of business. And so we were able to grab that spot and made a gallery there. And so neighbors were able to come in and make and sell their artwork and just make their money. So it was really beautiful. And yeah, so that and like
So
between volunteering.
you stayed
Hmm.
on with this project for a long time. Yeah, you said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
between volunteering and paid position, yes. And in the meantime, there was a bunch of different things. There was, a couple of emergency shelters in the city that one was looking for, like, I volunteered there for a while to help with art programming there with families. An emergency shelter that needed help was just literally running. Eviction prevention programs, murals here and there, just things like that. Um, and then the one of the people at Hartside decided to leave, and she encouraged me to apply for the job. So I was back there again for quite a long time until I think I had a breakdown, really, to be honest. Nonprofit work is ridiculous. Neighbors were amazing. The program was amazing. It was literally just like administration and that type of.
And it's it doesn't pay in any way, sustainable
Oh,
way.
absolutely
So
not.
it's like that's very
Absolutely not.
stressful.
Oh my goodness, no. I can't even. I mean, what did I make? Like 20,000, the most I ever made there, like working full time and no insurance and
Hmm.
nothing like that. But also just the way that they treated neighbors and whatever. So yeah, after a long time, it was like, oh man, this I thought was my dream job, but I'm literally like not mentally doing well. And at the time, I had like a 3 or 4 or 5 year old kid or something. Um, oh no, I guess my one kid was a little bit older, and then I don't know. Anyhow, I had to also take care of myself and my children,
Hmm.
and so yeah, I thought about tattooing at that point. The There is a woman that would come to the studio, and she's was sort of my inspiration about tattooing. I've been getting tattooed since I was like 17 or something, and was raised with folks who had tattoos, so it was just around it. But I didn't really think the way that I made art was maybe for anyone. I didn't know. And one of the neighbors that would come in to Hardside to make art all the time, she's incredible. Also one of my favorite people, and she said, "Well, I wish I could get tattooed like you get tattooed." And I would say naively or ignorantly was like, "Why? You can." And she was like, "You got a lot to learn, dude." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, tell me." And she's like, "Well, she had been hit by a drunk driver. She had a lot of emotional impairment and made it difficult for her to talk. And she was like always zooming around really fast in her motorized wheelchair. And she loves to dress up in costumes. Like, she's like, I just love Star Wars. I'm going to dress up like this." And she's like in her 70s and would always have like the shock of like blue or whatever hair. And she would roll into a tattoo shop right across the street from where we were and bring her cash. And they were like, "No, no, no, we're not, no, it's okay. We're not going to tattoo you."
Hmm.
I was like, "Oh, for God's sakes." And so I was like, "Hey, yeah, I'll tattoo you." So now every year on her birthday, she comes in to get tattooed. you know. Um,
Wow, that's a fucking story.
oh, it's goes so much deeper. But one of the things is that when she got hit by the drunk driver, she has a lot of scarring on her legs, and she's like, "Sometimes I don't wear shorts. I feel really embarrassed about that." And I had already been like thinking about scar covering just based on the tattoos that I have that I had been getting like for any reason. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so, like some of that we worked on with her as well. And it felt like it made sense. And then I get to work one on one with people, which is, I think, for my I don't know if it's my emotional health or just what I can feel more comfortable doing in a day is like being present with someone more one on one than in a bigger group setting like I was doing. I think I was just getting too maxed out
Hmm.
that way.
You have a private studio?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I started with two other folks that I had been tattooing with. We started a shop called Balm. And in July, it will have been 2 years that we've been there. Um, and so it's woman own and run. And the other two folks work in sort of like a bigger setting and like the entry of the shop. And, they have privacy screens and things. But one of my non negotiables for having a space was to be able to have a private booth, basically. And I tried to pay attention to a lot of things in the way that it's set up, So there's a doorway there, but there's, of course, like a window, and that's important, right? Like, so people can see, they don't feel trapped in there. I position
Hmm.
myself when I'm tattooing, like near the window, obviously not only to see, but then I'm toward the back of the space, and people always know where the door access is. There's privacy screens if people want to use them. I have mirrors
Hmm.
around so people can see if I'm tattooing them and I'm working, let's say, on their back. That for me, I mean, that's a very sensitive spot for me from my own assault,
Hmm. Hmm.
issues. And if they're not comfortable with mirrors, we can just cover them up, but just try to make sure, like, to set up the space in such a way and listen to feedback when someone's like, "Don't you have any fidget spinners or whatever?" Now I do,
Hmm.
all that stuff. So yeah, it's felt good. And,
Wow.
it's a zillion plants everywhere and try to make it a little uh, hopefully more comfortable than
Oh my
rose
God,
gold.
the plant thing. I love plants too, and I wanted to make my place a jungle, but the last time I had a state, one of those state, like the health department checks, they were
Oh
like,
yeah.
no plants within whatever,
Yes.
10 feet of the space. And my space is not
Yes.
that big, you know? So I moved
Yeah.
everything around. But yeah.
No, it's really difficult. Yeah. So in my booth itself, yeah, I'm not like can't have any the way that they say in Michigan, everything needs to be wipeable. So like,
Yeah,
I guess
same,
in theory
same
if
in
you wanted to,
California.
but you would just kill your plants. So the nice thing is in the booth itself, all the walls, like two of the walls are full, and then the other two walls go up, maybe it's like 10 or so feet. And then there's maybe like 2 feet that's open. So one, it allows like, light to come through, but I put just a shit ton of like glass bottles with like pothos plants, just whatever. And they're like, yeah, technically,
Hmm.
technically you're good. But the
Hmm.
rest of the shop, when you first walk in, there's just plants everywhere. We have plant cuttings for people to take and lending library and condoms and fentanyl testing strips and just,
Oh my
you
God.
name it.
I
Yeah.
wanna come visit.
Yes, please. Please do. Please do. Yeah.
So we kind
Yeah.
of like I was gonna say, because I didn't say why, when I looked at your page, I was like, this is my people, but I'm gonna
Mm.
read it right now. So your
Oh.
bio says on Instagram, tattooer at Balm Tattooing with priority to grief work and trauma survivors.
Mm.
And that is something that people don't say, right? Like people might
Mm-hmm.
assume that, if you go to a non man in this business, that maybe that
Yeah.
person will be a bit more sensitive to whatever stuff you have going on, but people don't say that out loud.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I
Yep.
don't say that on my bio, and I love that you do.
I mean, I appreciate you saying that. I think sometimes I have been worried about that. I initially did some consultation before, even tattooing and things. Oddly, with the person that I tattooed just this morning, she's sort of like a hero to me, almost like a mentor. And she sat down with me and was just like, you need to be clear that you're not a therapist, right? She's
Hmm.
like, I don't, I'm like, oh no, yeah. She's like, right, but say it, like, say it somewhere on your website, say it somewhere. Like, I am not a therapist. She's like, but she's like, don't discount the fact that like, she's like, you had, 17 years of like social service in the social service field. Not, I don't have a degree in those things. So I want to be clear. Like, I'm not trying to
But
pretend like,
but people will still do that, right? Like they will still, and that's the next piece of it. And
mm,
my thing is called ink medicine. Your thing is called sun medicine, right? Like
yeah,
we're
yeah.
siblings in that space because we
Yeah.
recognize that what we give is medicine for people,
Mm,
whether it's overt or subtle.
mm,
People who are getting tattooed, whether or not it is overt or subtle for them, they know what they're getting. They're getting medicine. But
mm,
like when you put it out there like that, like grief and trauma survivors to the front,
mm,
that opens the door for more
mhm.
weight, right? Like more,
Yeah,
where occasionally, of course I have folks that come in with trauma and grief and like the
yeah,
work, that's part of the session.
yeah.
But I think it's so incredibly brave of you to put it out
Mm.
there in that way, because then is every one of your sessions like that? I know what it means to have a session like that. So are all of them like that for
Um,
you?
I mean, I would say probably like 9 times out of 10. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think, look, there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, I don't know if I'm like the way that I put myself out there. Like, I don't know if that's the right way to do things. I've been a part of conversations with other tattooers. So Tamara Santibanez, when they have had discussion groups where they have you can like log into like a trauma informed tattooing sort of like workshop that they do or
Mm.
info session that they do.
I, I don't know anything
Oh,
about that.
it's Oh yeah, it's super cool. It's like about a little bit, maybe about an hour long. And at this point, it's pre-recorded. It used to be that you would log on and with other people and have discussions. But Tamara's a tattooer out of, I think they work at Flower World, or that's their shop in New York. But so I would like log on for the part of those discussions because I was like, oh, there are my people, I think. And they had really great discussions on like burnout and all kinds of things like that. And one of the topics was like, if you are you too showy and too buzz phrasey or whatever? I don't know if that's the way they put it, but when you talk about like, oh, I'm trauma informed, because it is such a freaking buzz phrase, except that it is also really important. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, well, I am like, try to stay up to date on trauma training. It can be all over the place. Sometimes I take them for that are offered to teachers. And if they don't mind that I'm sitting in on these, or for social workers, if they'll let me, I don't need their continuing education credits like they do. But if they let me, I'll pay for those sessions, and it's across the board. So I try to stay up to date, or mental health first aid in town, just whatever, because I feel like in general, that's good stuff to know, but specifically for tattooing. And so I just felt like I'm just going to say it. And if someone feels a way about that, or I'm being too showy, or I'm not fitting what that is, then I'll listen to that and I'll need to kind of adjust. But so far, it's been decent. And I don't ask people. I just say that that's what I do. And I figure if you find me, you find me, and you find me hopefully for a reason. I don't ask people ever to explain their
Mm-hmm.
trauma at all. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
again, almost 10 times out of 10, someone is already, when they message me, they're talking about some of their stuff. But I put myself out there like to do this. So I am most of the time somewhat prepared, sometimes not. And I also try to adjust my work schedule so that I am not doing too much,
Mm-hmm.
because I've already done that. I've already gotten to a point where I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore, because I'm single parenting two kids, and just life in general. And I'm getting fucking older,
Yeah, it's
like,
a lot. I mean, besides like the physical toll tattooing takes on your body,
oh,
right?
oh yeah,
You're also providing
yeah.
therapy. Like even if you're not a therapist, you're providing therapy.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things I was talking to about the therapist that I consulted with, was that I'm like, regardless of the fact that tattooers are not therapists, no matter if we've had trauma training or not, we hear this stuff all the time, right? Like my friends who are hairstylists and estheticians and massage therapists are like, oh my God, like sometimes I don't know what to do. And it's hard for them to set their own boundaries around, like, I can't
Mm-hmm.
talk to you about this stuff, whatever. And yeah, that stuff can be sort of hard to have boundaries around. But yeah, I would say the majority of folks come in, and it's very much across the board,
But
as to why
for
they come
me,
in.
it started with working. Well, when I started at Black and Blue, which was
Mm,
an all women, all queer shop, and
mm-hmm,
young women would come in and they would say basically immediately, I know you don't really finish other people's work. It's not really kosher in the tattoo world,
yeah.
but I was, hit on, sexually
Mm,
assaulted, made me feel uncomfortable by this male tattoo artist. So I couldn't go back to them. Can you finish this piece? So that
mm-hmm.
piece was kind of something they had to say, in order to get in the door in some ways, right? Or what they thought they had to say in
Right.
order to get in the door. And
Yeah.
so that relationship and that session would start with their trauma around getting tattooed and made to feel uncomfortable or straight up
Mm,
assaulted. So
oof.
I kind of like, I didn't feel like there was really any way, not that I wanted to come out of, like, get out of that space, right? But that was like, okay, now I understand this is my job to like
Yeah.
hold these clients and to
Mm,
finish these tattoos and to provide a space that's safe.
mm,
And honestly, I have done that as much as I could have, but I've also didn't grow up with healthy parenting and
mm,
didn't grow up with healthy tattoo mentor parenting either.
mm,
So I
mm-mm,
would see people with no boundaries, right? Like
mm-hmm,
I would be in a room with a tattooer who was just like herself spilling her guts to her clients in like a way
mm-hmm,
that was in retrospect entirely inappropriate. But at the time I was learning that this is how you do it, and you just
mm-hmm.
talk and you just pretend like you're besties and you just create this really warm friend space. And then I had sessions where afterwards I had somebody really specifically, like maybe it was a year or two later, who was
Mm.
like, you made me feel really uncomfortable and here's why and
Ooh.
here's what you said.
Mm,
And I was like, I made like a sexual joke, and this person had had sexual assault, was
ah,
a survivor, and
mm-hmm,
was just like, what the fuck, like you made me feel so uncomfortable and I really don't like this
mm,
tattoo that I have for me now.
mm,
And I was just like so deeply sorry, and I wrote this
mm-hmm,
person like a really long apology. I,
mm,
did what I could, and I think in
mm-hmm,
the end they were like, okay, thank you for the apology. I appreciate it. Like, I'm
mm-hmm,
done, but like, I just really need to tell you. And I was like, I'm so grateful you told me. But,
mm-hmm.
it was
Yeah.
just like how in the attempt to create a warm, open space, I made the grave mistake of joking in a sexual way and making somebody feel
Yeah.
really uncomfortable, and,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and like, I'm ashamed that, that's probably not the only time that's ever happened. It's just that the people haven't come and told me. But I'd be like, oh, I don't have any boundaries because I'm just like trying to what, like, please you, make you feel a certain way. Like,
Yeah.
I need to work on this.
Yeah.
So I think that was like a really rough, long road for me. You
Oh
know.
yeah. Oh, and I mean, I've that is that's a hard gift, right? In a way to receive when
Hmm.
someone, gives feedback like that. And, was pretty amazing. Not that they needed to, but they were able to come to you and say, hey, here's the deal. Even if they're done, they knew or they felt somehow comfortable enough that they could say that to you, knowing that you would hopefully, move forward. And yeah, I've had some feedbacks from folks before, and it's, kind of across the board. Yes, I've made jokes with folks. Yes, I've like, especially like early on, I'm like, oh, we're just relating back and forth, whatever. And I'd be like, well, I'm feeling like I'm trauma dumping on someone, and what the heck,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. For
And
sure.
so,
Yeah.
yes, it's taken like quite a process. And I'm not saying I'm like, some like fancy, magician, or that I have it down pat by any means. But I think a lot of it is like holding space, and that there's absolute time for like laughter and like absolute silliness. I have the best time just like laughing with people about other stuff. I think sometimes people think it's just going to be all just like gut wrenching tears and things. And sometimes it is. And there are clients who just cannot finish a piece, and not necessarily because of physical pain, right? It's just
Hmm.
too emotional and they have to leave, and that's okay. There's always space for that. But there's also such a tremendous amount of like joy and laughter and just sometimes silliness, or sometimes we're just like, oh, this Mariah Carey song is the best and we're going
Yeah.
to sing this together or whatever. So when people do give feedback, I think, it's just like constant reminder of like checking my ego, right? Someone left me some anonymous feedback and said, hey, I know that you check in a lot about touch, and I'll say like, oh, are there any sensitivities to touch that I can be mindful of? And then I'll say, talk about like, oh, well, may I touch your arm here and shave this area? But I didn't describe to someone how much I was going to be shaving. Like I shaved the area of the tattoo we had decided on. And because we were going to use, in this case, it's like a dermal wrap, right? Like Sanoderm or something.
Hmm. Hmm.
I just automatically shaved like another inch or so, or maybe inch and a half beyond that, so it wouldn't stick to their hair. But I didn't explain that to them or ask permission for that. And they gave feedback later and was like, I have been on T for quite some time. It's taken me a long time to grow hair. And I know you had to shave a spot, but you shaved, like much more than what you said you were going to. I was like, you're totally right. And I didn't have like it, because it was anonymous feedback. I don't know, who it came from, but I really appreciate that someone, that was just one example. And then, so now I'm like, okay, like course correct after that. And again, that's when someone felt comfortable enough saying what they were feeling. So I just, it's just a lot of, I just feel like there tends to be so much ego in this industry. It's more than I
Hmm.
anticipated. And I think I have to constantly, just remind myself like, oh, like, even if it's something that I don't feel like I'm maybe doing, I'm like, oh, we're still in this like very perceived and well, understandable why people would perceive it that way. This position of power, and any ways that I can knock that down, as much as possible, and have people, have more, I don't know, um, I don't know, like agency, I guess. Um,
It's such a funny thing about power in the tattoo artist
uh,
client relationship, right? Because like first, like they're the reason you can exist as a tattooer. Like they are the
uh,
ones who are paying your bills. They're the ones allowing you
uh,
close enough to tattoo them.
uh,
So they're the one holding the power. But then they look at
uh,
us like we're holding power because we're holding a needle, and we're the maker of what they're gonna end up with in the end.
yeah,
And then there's also the part of it where I'm like, if you want me to do a thing on you that I think is not great, then I don't want to put out work in the world that's not the best that I can put out, right? Like there's the
yeah,
ego of like the artist being like,
oh
I want to
yeah,
make each piece the best it can be. So, and you don't know what that means because you don't know art as a client. You don't know what a good tattoo or bad tattoo might look like. Like not all of them do, right?
right,
So there's just like all these little intersections and trying to explain that. And trying to say, okay, I've been doing this a while, like, please listen to me.
Right.
Like, I've been through
Yeah.
this. And like at this point in my career, people are for the most part like, you know best. I know you know best. And like they'll just kind of let me. But there's still like, I don't like that power, or they'll be like, make it smaller or whatever. Like the little tensions of
Yeah.
like, them being like, I want it my way. And I'm like, but your way is not the right way. It's just like, it's like a piece that
Oh
sometimes is
yeah.
just still so sticky.
Oh, absolutely. I don't, and does that change? I don't know. I mean, I think it's nice when, in general, if you worked with the client before, or word of mouth, right, from client to client or what have you, where they can share with each other, like, actually, this person does listen, or like you can feel comfortable, or I don't know, like hopefully, I don't ever try to, I don't even try to use the word like safe space. Like, of course, that's the goal, but like, I don't, maybe it's
There's no
not for
such thing.
someone.
Safe is not a
No,
thing. Yeah.
no, I don't
People
think
aren't even
so.
safe in their own home in their bed, right?
No,
Like there's no safe space
no,
alone.
not at
Like,
all, not at
yeah.
all. And I mean, that's always the goal, but like, I'm like, okay, nope. But like we try, like continuously try to just be compassionate and listening. And yeah, there are times when someone's like, I just had a client or a potential client who was like, um, I want these words. It's like 3 words, one longer word and 2 very short words. And I have this idea that they would fit inside like the size of a quarter. And I was like, I can't do that for you. And sometimes if it's out of my skill set, something like, I don't know, like color tattoo or realism or something like that, I'll refer to someone that I have felt more comfortable with or confident with, and they can decide on their own. But if it's stuff that I'm like, oh, I just want to be really clear about something, like, any tattooer that will tell you that that's okay, I want you to be mindful of a few things, and so
Hmm.
try, more that way. And, lots of people coming like for finger tattoos, and I almost don't want to do them at all
Hmm.
anymore. I'm like, like no one ever takes care of them. They fall out most of the time, or they want things on the insides of their fingers or something. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and trying to explain why.
Yeah. I do that stuff and I
Mm,
tell them, this is not sustainable and
mm-hmm,
it's not going to stay.
mm-hmm,
And you should know that. Do you want it
mm-hmm.
anyway? Right. Because I feel like I kind of come to this place, because I do a lot of watercolor. I do a lot of like
Yeah. Yeah.
lighter tattoos that don't necessarily, I've been doing white outline tattoos and,
Mm-hmm,
they're not sustainable for 10, 20, 30 years.
mm-hmm.
But like I've come to this place where I'm like, well, this person could die tomorrow. They could die in a year. They
Yeah.
could die in 5 years. Like if they're getting so much joy out of having this tattoo now, right?
Mm-hmm,
And if they know it's not going to look the way other people's tattoos look,
mm-hmm.
then why not? It can be touched up,
Yeah.
whatever. So I
Mm.
hear that, but yeah, I think also the audiences are going to be different, like here in California versus like where you
Oh.
are in Grand
Oh.
Rapids. Yeah,
Yeah.
and what people
Yeah.
expect and what they see around them, like it's all going to
Uh-huh.
be a little bit different.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, no, no doubt there. Yeah.
So I'm also curious, like, who do you get
Mm-hmm.
tattooed by? How do you choose the people you get tattooed
Mm.
by? Do you only go to the same people all the time? Do you go to new people?
I do want to new people. That's been a more recent acquisition for me. So, when I was 17 and getting my first tattoo, I thought it was just like, great. What that this, like, I don't know. I was in Toledo, found this shop. This dude is, I'm guessing, like in his maybe mid 40s or something. And just looked like like a biker shop kind of thing. I'm like, okay, cool. Like this is like everyone that I was raised around with my dad or whatever. And, uh, and then I'm sitting in the shop with him and I'm like, oh, he didn't even ask for my ID and didn't even need like adult approval. I was like, how cool is that? And I'm like, oh my God, like gross. Um, but halfway through, he was just like, I was getting, I'm a secular Jew. It's my dad's family. We're all Jewish. And so I was getting my name in Hebrew under my arm and he was like tattooing it. And halfway through, he was like, what does this say anyways? And I was like, oh, it's just my name in Hebrew. And then he made a slur. I was like, what? And I'm just like, in the shop by myself, like 17-year-old. And then, he's like, and what are you doing later? I'm like, well, not you, because I'm a child, like just, gross. And I remember afterwards, thinking like, I really liked being able to like wear these things that kind of, I don't know, spoke a little bit more about who I am. I mean, like it or not, this is my home, right? This body of mine. And over the course of time, I think I focused more on what those tattoos meant to me. Whether or not someone understands the meaning of them or puts that together or whatever is not their business. But I just kept finding, or so I thought anyways, around like the Midwest of like Ohio and Michigan or something. I was like, well, I guess it is just going to be a lot of like dudes that I'll probably feel uncomfortable with. And if I can just kind of sit through those experiences and hopefully not get harassed, but just have it be very like, oh, sorry, I'm inconveniencing you to be here, but whatever. And so I did that for a long time. And then, you know, to be honest, like I had one session in Baltimore with an artist at the tattoo museum there, and it was a man. It was the first time I'd ever had a good experience with a man, and was like, oh, I didn't even know you could have a good experience getting tattooed at all. And then I got tattooed by a woman for the first time, and was like, holy shit. And then I got tattooed by a woman, and I was like, no, that person was every bit as fucking bros club as these other dudes.
Yeah.
So now I think I just try to pay a lot of attention, like for sure, if it's something that seems like it fits me, like design wise, but to just who they are. What is their shop like? If I have to, and I really like the artist, if they're in a big wide open shop, I'll go. It's pretty overwhelming to me. I'm like, it'd be really overstimulating and whatever, but if the person is there and I feel like I can develop a trust with them, then I'll go there. And I just try to pay attention to that a lot. It is mostly women. It is mostly non-binary folks. I don't often get tattooed by men, but so I think, yeah, someone would really have to stand out to have like a cis man, you know, tattoo me. Even in the times where I have, it's been very like, oh, okay, like even if as a tattooer and I knew this person, like the tattoo looks really good, but it just, I don't know, whatever. So again, I know. There's that whole fucking, I know. Not all men. We get it. But you know, so the
Most of
other
them.
thing, I think one of the other things that I have been doing a little bit more lately is, I love getting tattoos from apprentices. We don't have any at the shop. I don't know if anyone of us like mentally has the capacity. I don't think I have the skill set for that anyhow, but I like to just check out apprentices like at different shops. I especially if the shop owner or whomever like if the person is able to do more of what they like to do, um, instead of necessarily like either spitting out cookie cutter stuff or just not doing stuff that they feel like they have to do. I like doing that. And the other thing is that it allows me, especially if it's in this town or you know like somewhere nearby, I can then more comfortably recommend those artists to clients, especially if it's a skill set that I don't have. So I might go in for, I have a lot of black work on me. I don't have a lot of color on me, and
Mm-hmm.
I do black work primarily. But, you know, I've seen tattooers who they will also do black work, and then, but I know that they also do color. So I can check, oh, okay, like this person seems really great. And then, oh, what do you know? A couple more tattoo artists started, you know, like taking, you know, I would see them at like domestic violence training. Oh, okay, I see you, you know, and they're like, yeah, seems like a good idea. I'm like, yeah, it feels criminal to me that we like, we have to have our bloodborne pathogen certificate. You know, people get licensed or shops get licensed, and that is it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what?
There's no
You
human
know,
element in the official training at all.
no. And cosmetology school in town or in well, at least in Kent County, people are mandated to like have at least a minimum of like training around sexual trafficking and things like that. I'm like, you know, I brought it up to a body art panel. Michigan Body Art Conference happens once a year, and I, you know, logged on to a virtual one and posed that as a question. Like, is that something, you know, could tattoo artists be required to once a year, just even if it's just 1 hour, some basics? And they absolutely laughed at me. And I was like, I was just like, holy crap, you know? And they were like, what are you talking about? And I just said, well, you know, you know, I try to stay up to date on, you know, trauma training, and just think it's a good idea, since even though, you know, you don't have to, even if that's not your goal, we still hear things all the time. And the guy on the panel who like makes decisions about all of this stuff in Michigan said, congratulations, you're practicing medicine without a license. And I was like, oh,
What a dick. What the fuck?
it
I'm
was,
sorry that
I
happened
was
to you.
actually, my boss at the time was also logged in and was able to like, you know, chat with me and just be like, oh shit. Like, they were like, it's such a niche thing. Like, I don't really get what you're saying. I'm like, it's not, this is not at all, but okay.
Well,
And
that's because
so,
they're tattooing mostly other bros. That's probably what's
mhm,
happening, right? And I've seen that
yeah.
and heard that from people that women tattoo artists are not seen as good by men
Mm,
in the industry, and so men for
hmm
the most part go to other men, and so yeah, they're the kind of people they tattoo are most likely not the ones who are victims of domestic violence or trafficking. So
mm, yep.
absolutely.
Yeah, it can be rough in that way. And so, again, I mean, I feel really glad to see like so many, I don't know if you feel this way, but sometimes I feel like everybody and their cousin is a tattoo artist now. And in some ways I'm like, oh geez, but in other ways I'm here for it because some folks will stick around and they'll do their thing. And I think some of the folks in the meantime are like really flipping the table and being like, I'm not sitting with this shit anymore. There are some really great like apprentices in town that were working at other shops who are like, misgender me one more motherfucking time. One more motherfucking time. All right, I'm out. And then they're done. And but at this time, like they have the privilege to do so for some reason. And then at this time, there's more shops. And so they have other options to go to. And I like that they're like some of the folks, anyways, are just like, nope, I will start my own shop. And I don't care if I just came out of my apprenticeship. Like, I'm not with the shit. And so like, it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but I'm also just like, you know what, if it gives people more opportunity to not have to sit through like bros club fuckery, and we all get really busy, like, and I'm trying to maintain my own boundaries with like how much I can be working until my little hand falls off or
How much are
my
you
kids.
able to work these days? I'm curious.
Oh, listen, I again, I mean, this is like a true privilege, but I feel like I worked like hard to like get to this point, but also it's still a privilege of like the shop that the two other folks, Tiffany and Emily, we found. Um, the rent is so reasonable. I mean, we split it 3 ways, and it is us. We were each individually paying what the entire shop costs, like when we were at other shops. And I get it. Like I got
Mhm.
other shops got to make their percentage and they cover your insurance and all of that stuff. But because of that, and some other things too. I mean, be serious about like, I got Medicaid, I got food stamps, I've been in the same, house for a really long time and
Mhm.
whatever. Um, but like it has allowed me, don't have a savings account or anything like that, but like I'm able to tattoo 3 days a week.
I'm not
Part
even
of the
asking the numbers
Oh
thing. It
no,
was just like, how many
yeah,
hours are you able, like, because of, I feel
yeah,
like, yeah, what you're doing goes
mm,
even deeper than like what, I consider a lot of my sessions like pretty heavy and deep, but
mm,
like how many hours are you able to do that a week or a day or how many
mm.
days? So like 3 days a week. That's good. It's good. I'm glad you're
Yeah.
able to keep it
I
to three
try
days a
to
week.
like, if it's possible, I try to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday to give myself a break, like in
Mm-hmm.
between.
Mm-hmm.
Then I can also spend like weekends with my kids or just,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And having like, oh, what do you know? Like time for myself, uh, that type of stuff. But yeah, some of it is physical. Like I had a hand injury just for no reason. I think it's literally just casualty of aging or some shit. And I was like, oh, hell. And was forced to take 2 weeks off of work. And, like doing that when you're self employed is like, how the fuck am I going to make ends meet? And I'm like, oh,
Right.
I guess we selling pictures of my ass again, like it's all right. Like it happens. Um,
What, are you being
and
literal about that? You got an
yeah,
OnlyFans? Cool.
well, no, I mean, I logged into an OnlyFans, but I don't ever use it. No, I just was like, like going direct with people that like, sometimes it's creeps, but not creeps enough where they're going to like cross my boundaries, like, um, in a way that would like not be okay. So I'm like, yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Like,
I
do
mean,
it.
I'm like, I've done sex work in my 20s and I have
Sure. Yeah.
occasionally dipped my toe back in like during the
Absolutely.
pandemic and here and there. But
Yeah.
I do get a little bit weird about my body's recognizable because I have tattoos, right?
Yeah.
And like,
hmm
am I going to run into a client on there?
Oh
Am I
yeah.
gonna,
Oh
so
yeah.
I get
Oh yeah.
occasionally
And
very like paranoid about that shit.
I mean, that's extremely valid. I think, right? I mean, I think you and I are both like very pro, right? Like pro sex work, pro, all of that. I think, like different clothing and different, things like that, like have been tried to be helpful in that way. And in the
Hmm.
time when I've like had someone like pay to like have sex with me or me have sex with them, whatever, it was someone that I had sex with before, and I was just like, no pictures of this or whatever. Just tried to be really clear about that because, yeah, I am concerned about some of that stuff getting out there. In specifically because, like, especially if I don't know if I need to worry about this at all, but I have some clients who are like, they've had like really intense domestic violence and sexual assault and whatever. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. And maybe it's not the same thing. Maybe it's fine, but it's just something that I have thought about, like, to be recognizable. And the other thing is, like, I don't need people to have access to all of me all the time, you know? Like,
Mm-hmm. No, no, you don't. No, you don't.
yeah.
That's we were talking about this earlier about clients trauma dumping, kind of
Mm,
or consensual way because we kind of
mm,
ask for it, right? But I've also recently been thinking a lot about like what are the signs of manipulators, and people who take
mm.
advantage of you. And
Yeah.
one of the signs that therapists say is trauma dumping immediately, right? Not
Yeah.
having a boundary of like, let me get to know you some and trust you, and then I'll tell
Yeah.
you what's up with me.
Yeah.
And but because it's like kind of part of the profession is that you get the story first and then you get to know the
Yeah.
person the second.
Yeah.
Um, and I've had to fire a couple clients in the last couple
Yeah.
years for taking advantage of me, like kind of like
Yeah.
beyond, like overstepping boundaries over and over and over again to the point where I was like, okay, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
And like having given people chances and then just being like, I'm done, and being like, I don't want to end up in that position again because
Right.
this specific person in the situation probably was preventable because
Mm,
I kept having the weird feeling like this
mm.
person's lying to me. This is not, something's not feeling quite right continuously, right? But like
Yeah.
spending a couple years tattooing that person, and then eventually I
Mm,
was like, okay, these are really more factual things you've done now that have overstepped
yeah.
my really factual easy boundaries, and now I
Yeah.
feel done, but I can't even explain to you that it's been coming a long time.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just can't like fire somebody based on like, I think you were lying about that random thing that doesn't affect me at all. Like, okay, you
Which
know?
is tough because even if you have a feeling, right? Like, yeah, I mean, how did that work for you? I mean, I don't know how many times you've had to do it, but like, how, I mean, you don't have to, like, necessarily
Yeah.
say all the ins and outs of it, but just like emotionally.
Oh, it's so hard. It's so
Yeah.
hard because also that person, we did have a connection, right?
Ah,
We got to know each other, and
mm,
I don't think everything I was told was true, but
mm,
I told her things that I hadn't, that I was dealing with, like
mm,
that I felt we could relate upon. And when it was time for me to say, no, the door's closed, we're done, her response was like, but I need you, right? Like,
ah,
but I can't go anywhere else. But I need this. Like, I need this to be okay. And it was so, so hard for me to keep that boundary, right?
yeah.
And even like afterwards, when she really understood that I meant it, when she said, but can you please then recommend somebody else because I don't know where to go? And I was like, I didn't respond. I was like, no, I
Mm,
can't. I don't want to, I don't, I'm not a therapist. This is not my job. And also, I wouldn't
mhm.
put one of my friends through what I went through with you.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? I mean, I think like from an early age, I had such great examples, especially my mom when I was a lot younger, and my auntie for sure, about just like, you just treat people like they're people. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, you by someone on the street. If you don't want to give someone money, don't give someone money. But if, like, you don't need to treat someone
Yeah.
like, oh, like they have some like terrible plague or something, and like, learning that and just trying to remember that. And there are times when I'll know a client will come in and I'm like, ooh, whew, that was kind of a lot today. But if I happen to have a history with them, I can understand more, like, they talked about that it was like the anniversary of their
Hmm.
son's death, right? Like, some of this stuff and whatever content warning or things, for this episode that might need be. But, I've like, tattooing someone who lost her son to fentanyl poisoning, right? Like, whatever like her son was using was laced with fentanyl, and he was gone in an instant. And in an instance, and she, I don't know, like, in moments like that, I'm like, yeah, like, I understand that there's going to be a little more, like, sensitive topics or whatever. And it's interesting too, because I feel like 9 times out of 10 clients who come in to talk will say like, hey, like, is it okay for me to share this, whatever. I think one of the hardest times that I had was actually a therapist that came in, and she didn't like check in at all, and she told me something in such graphic detail that I actually, like, when I was done with that tattoo, I canceled my next appointment and I didn't come to work the next day. It was something that I was so unprepared for, and the graphic details of something that I didn't know. And I thought to myself, oh, she probably was just like, oh, I can talk to you because you're in this line of work. And I'm like, well, but I'm still a human and I'm not a therapist. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have the same,
You have all the same tools that they do.
whatever's, but
Yeah.
yeah, no. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, yeah, sometimes it's like, okay to hold space for folks. And sometimes I don't have it. If I can, like tattooing 2 people a day
Max.
is
It's
on, like
yeah.
three times a week is max for me. And I want to, like, I feel like I don't say that stuff very often because I don't ever want clients to, feel like, oh, okay, well, like we're just maxing her out or stressing her out or something. It's not. I mean, I'm just human, and this is like an aspect of my life. Like being a tattooer is one
Yeah.
aspect of my life, right? And sometimes I forget, and I make that more than maybe what it even needs to be. And I remember, like, I don't want any aspect of that except my own individuality and me being a parent, to my kids. Otherwise, I'm like, because this could all go at any
For
minute, right?
sure.
My hand could give out and I need to do something else. Or I might be done with this in a few years. And that
Right.
just,
And you could
so there was
shift.
a time and a place for this. I just think that I didn't, I don't think I had an interest in getting into tattooing. There are so many like beautiful and amazing tattooers out there now, especially nowadays. People are so much more
Yeah.
thoughtful and whatever. But I don't think I had an interest in getting into tattooing just for the sake of tattooing, which is beautiful and enough for plenty of artists. But for me, it was really imperative to be able to try to make a connection with folks, and in whatever way, try to be present for at least in that moment to hold space and possibly give something, for their, like, again, body reclamation, or any way for them to celebrate or burn it down or whatever, like sentiment that they need. Because again, this space of ours, like it or not, some days is our home, and what way that we can take care of that, or decorate it or pay homage to or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I had this I got this machine a few years ago, and I couldn't figure out how to use it. It was just like a new thing for me. And so I had a bunch of time in between clients, and I just was like, fuck it. It's like whip off my pants. I'm just standing there in my underwear. I'm like, I got space underneath my navel here. And I just like drew a flower. I have no idea. I was just like, I don't know. It's on my body. Clearly, I'm not going to do that to a client. But for me, I'm like, whatever the fuck. Like, what needs to be here? I'm like, a flower. I think a flower needs to be here. All right. So I'm just like drawing a flower, fucking upside down, And then I write the word home. I did have a stencil for that. I ain't that good. And I like put that right underneath the flower. And it was just like, I don't know. It just felt like the right thing to do, or instinctual, or whatever the fuck. And I remember then very like right afterwards, like wiping it off and being like, okay, I think I understand how to use the machine. Okay, cool, cool, cool. And looking
Is
at
it
the
a
tattoo. What's that?
is it a rotary?
It was a rotary. It's the
Yeah.
first time I had yeah, I was going from coils to rotaries, and like now, like exclusively use a rotary pen. It's much nicer on my hand. And
I have not gotten there yet. I haven't gotten to the pens yet. I might ask you some questions
oh
about
yeah,
that.
well, again, I'm not any, yeah, I have some thoughts about it, but
And
so yeah, I
even though
looked
we
at
do
this.
different styles,
Oh,
but yeah,
we do,
still,
yeah.
yeah.
They when I like wiped off that tattoo that I had done, like wiped it down and looked, and it was like now not anymore paying attention to like how to use that machine. I remember looking down and just thinking like, yeah, fuck, man, like this body has been home to a couple children, home to, like a marriage that was pretty fucked up, different partnerships, sex work. It's been home to some violence, lots of things, sexual assault, like all kinds of things. And I was like, but like it or not, sometimes like this is still my home, and this is my way to figure out how to like keep connections with myself, and then right, we see other people who are like, I need a memorial for someone that I don't know how to let go of them, or I just want to figure out how to carry them with me, or pay homage or whatever. So yeah, it's a process.
I
Yeah.
have a home tattoo as well.
You do?
Yeah.
Shocking. Look at all these things. I'm curious about your what's your sun sign?
Aries.
Really?
Yeah. What's
Huh.
yours?
I feel like you're gonna hang up on me. Uh,
What?
Scorpio.
Oh, I so like knew you were gonna say that. I am
Yeah.
Scorpio rising.
Oh, okay. Right on. Right on.
And I have my
Um,
best friend's a Scorpio,
oh
my
yeah.
stepchild was Scorpio,
Mm,
an old like love of my life who's now
mm,
passed on
mm,
was a Scorpio. Like
mm,
have a lot of Scorpio energy in my life.
mm. Yeah.
What's
Tiff.
your rising?
Cancer.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What's your moon?
Oh. Capricorn. So I
Okay.
feel like that's the only way I can hold a business together is because of my moon. But otherwise, whew, caps are rough. See, now people can come for me. You can come for me for
My
whatever shit that I have said in this podcast, but also specifically that.
I love that you were like, you're gonna hang up on me because I guess some people don't like Scorpios. But I had one person, I don't remember what her thing was. Maybe she was a Cancer, but she was like a friend of somebody I was dating. And the first time I met her, she goes, "What's your sign?" The first thing she said to me. And I was like, "I'm an Aries." And she was like, "Get away from me." She was like so intense. And I was like, okay,
I've been
cool.
burned much before. Like,
Yeah. So there's people who really hate Aries too.
mm. I had
But
my youngest kiddo, my 10-year-old is an Aries, and they are, they're just like, they're so passionate and, they like what they like, but they're very much like, it's like having like a fire around all day, like a burning fire all day. I don't mean that in like a bad way, just like the intensity.
well, so, I feel like this might be an unpopular opinion, but even though Scorpio is not a fire sign, it
No.
feels
Oh,
fire to me.
right.
But the fire is different, right? Where Aries is whoosh,
Yeah.
Scorpio is like hot red coals.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the energy of the fire that Scorpio to me holds. So because we both have that fire, I feel like we really do mesh well.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was going to say my partner is a Capricorn sun,
Ah, okay.
and she is an Aries rising. So there's like
Oh,
that is
okay.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. What's your moon, did you say?
It's Sagittarius.
Oh, Sagittarius. Okay. Okay.
So I feel like I'm basically just fire. Like I could
Yeah.
really use some earth, but I'm gonna have to get it elsewhere.
Yeah. And that's okay, right? Like, that's what we do. We're more than just like one thing. There's so much like
Yeah.
both and, whatever. But yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. I feel like for me, I feel like I have like one hand or arm or whatever is always in like this sort of like embracing hug, and my other hand is always like in a fucking fist or like holding like a machete or something like that.
Well,
And
that's
I'm
because you're two who's been through a lot of trauma. Like that makes totally makes sense.
yeah, but I think I don't know. That's that like somehow that Scorpios are water signs, but like I feel like I think of us as being like like can be like loving and very passionate about things, but if somebody came for you, somebody came for my children, my friends, my neighbors, I will fuck them up. I am very pro violence. Like I don't, I just, I'm
Yeah.
not just gonna go out and like beat somebody's ass for no reason. But I am very much like, nope, I will fuck shit up. I'm trying to do that a little bit more for myself when someone comes for me. But I mean,
Uh-huh.
if they come for me and it's like shit that I need to hear, okay. But with with this
It's so
fuckery or
hard
whatever.
though. It's so
Mm-hmm.
hard though. I know I get so angry when people try to fuck with like my livelihood or something. I recently
Mm.
had this person who I'd never tattooed, but essentially, she asked me about getting tattooed. I sent her my link for how to
Mm.
book. That was it. And then I made a reel that she took personally, even though there was
Mm.
no connection there. Like I made a
Oh.
reel that was it's kind of a joke, and then she took it like it was personally directed at her, even though
Oh.
like there was like a month in between. Like there was just like no
Mm-hmm.
connection there.
Yeah, yeah.
So she went nuts and left me like 15 one-star reviews all over the internet in every possible, and also came after me on IG and was like, "You're a horrible person and you
Oh
suck
my
at tattooing," and
goodness.
just like all this stuff, like really abusive language.
Mm.
And I was really, really angry. So I retorted. Like I was
Mm.
as shitty to her as I could handle myself being shitty to her. Like there wasn't
Mm.
as much, I couldn't go leave her business a review or whatever. And
Yeah.
but I wasn't awesome, like
Mm.
in the reviews on Google that she left me like 15 reviews on Google.
Mm.
Google wouldn't remove them even though it was clearly the same person. And she even said, "I'm doing this multiple times because I hate you that much," basically.
Oh.
It's like this person had never fucking met. Like my
Right.
interaction with her basically was like, "Here's how you get tattooed by me. Here's the link to book,"
Yeah. but somehow like, yeah, she
Like
was obviously
something
doing
wires
other
crossed. Like
stuff.
she
Yeah.
thought that I was like personally attacking her in my reel, which is wild to me. But
Mm.
and
Mm.
so I ended up writing like on under the reviews, I was like, this person is stalking me. This person, has
Mm.
no like isn't mentally well. Like I really just need her to leave me. Like I wrote kind of my side of how I felt.
Mm.
And I have a little business friend group where three of
Mm-hmm.
us are small business owners, and my friend Rachel was like, well, what you could have said would be like,
Mm.
clearly you've been hurt. I'm sorry for
Mm.
your pain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry if I added something to your pain. I hope you have a beautiful day.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you're so mature. It's not what I
Well,
did.
it's also, like it can be a lot easier to say that when it's not like your own personal situation, right? Like there are a lot of things that I'll play in my head, like fuck this motherfucker. I mean, I'm not even was thinking about clients. I'm just thinking about people probably that I've dated
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
But
And that's
like,
like more personal, right? But this is
yeah,
clearly not about me. And I definitely
no,
could have
no.
handled it differently because this
But
is
that's
not
how I
about
mean we
me. But like she
learn,
came after my fucking
right?
livelihood at a time
Yeah,
when shit is hard. Like I
yeah.
have less interest now in my inbox than I've ever had, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Like the recession is hitting hard, like
Yes,
I have the
yes.
most followers, the most reach, I have the most beautiful work I've ever had because I've grown this much,
Mm.
but like yet I have the least,
Mm.
emails waiting for me because the recession's hitting and it's like people are
Yeah.
not doing as much luxury work and
No,
tattooing
and
for
even
as
even
luxury.
like there, I think I don't know. My take also is just like the initial, I know, forgive the phrase, but like the self care, especially when a lot of us were forced to shut down for a while. I think people perceived it then as like there was like a scarcity mindset around certain things of like. I mean, yes, for some folks it was getting their hair cut and whatever else, but with tattooing, especially where it can be something that is like so deeply personal, perhaps, or even if it's just something cute or whatever. And if someone had maybe some like unemployment money that was coming in, or even just a certain amount of time that they had on their hands, or I'm finally going to like take care of myself. And then you're right, like not only like is the recession like hitting really hard, I think sometimes people are like a little. I mean, we've gotten a lot of feedback, or I guess I should say I have gotten a lot of feedback, and I haven't fixed anything about it of just being accessible or in the way of like, well, why can't like I just get in with you anytime that I want to? Like, why are tattooers so busy? I'm like, yeah, that's yeah, like we are. We're also just people. Like we use machines, but we are not machines. Like
Mhm.
it just is what it is. And so yeah, it's difficult then, right? When someone comes after you in a way that it's not for you to like learn and grow and receive this feedback. This was just like a personal attack. And clearly, yeah, that person like they had no real experience with you and they just were going on like a strong bender about something. That's very difficult to maintain on that end. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I think it's good that you are in that business group and had some good feedback, but yeah, it's hard not to just be like, oh yeah. Like,
Oh yeah, I was so
yeah.
like, I was like, where does this bitch live? I'm about to
Mm.
like send her a baggie of dog poop. I
Oh,
was just like
damn.
and for days, right? Because it like
Uh,
happened, and then the reviews came, and then my friends noticed, and they told me about that, and it
mm-hmm.
was just like a whole thing. Anyway, we don't
Yeah.
need to give it any more
Oh, yeah. I see what you mean,
time.
but yeah.
So
Yeah.
I sounds like you sounds like you've never had an apprentice. Is that right?
No, I don't think I ever will. The way that I feel about myself. So there's always room to learn, right? With tattooing, with just like being present with people and whatever, right? Um, I feel like, although I still have lots of room to grow in terms of my personal skill set, I feel like I'm far better with people than I am a tattooer, to be honest. I'm not trying to be too shitty about myself. I just like, if you don't like my style, you don't like my style, and that's okay. You don't have to get tattooed by me, right? But there are some things where I'm like, I don't know, like my technical skill set, just like I've been a lot slower to pick up on that. I've seen apprentices that picked it up in like fucking 2 months, and I'm like, motherfucker, I've been doing this for 7 years, and I'm still like, shit, I can troubleshoot a lot better now. So I'm proud of myself about that.
Yeah.
But there's things that I'm like, fuck, man, like I still can't figure out like, well, I don't know what, like whatever. I just don't. I draw really loosely anyhow, and truth be told, and I don't talk about this too often. I think because of the arthritis in my hand and a little bit of my age, as I draw, I can tell my hand like shakes a bit. I don't even drink fucking coffee. Like it would just jack me up too much. But I was like, well, good thing I draw in a loose and expressive way because what the
Hmm.
fuck? So, I mean, if people
I
know
think
that and then, oh, sorry.
I think your work is beautiful.
Oh, thanks. I mean,
I don't.
yeah, I don't, I'm not trying to be like super shitty. I'm just like, my style is
Yeah.
a certain way, whatever. But I'm like, I think
Well, I think
if,
we all feel that way, right? Like I
oh
look
yeah,
at
maybe.
all these people on Instagram all the time being like, wow, they're so much better than me. What am I doing? Like, why would somebody go to me? Like, look at these other people.
Oh
And then my
yeah.
clients are like, you're amazing. You're the best. I looked all
Mm.
over the place and you're the best
Oh.
person in San Francisco. You're the best. Like, right. Like, it's
Mm.
like they're my, if that's how they feel, then that's all that's important, right?
Mm.
If they feel like they're getting the best they can get, that's all I care about. I don't need to be like, yeah, but that person that I saw on IG last week, they're better than me. And my client would be like,
Well,
what?
I feel glad that like that you are able to, you know what I mean? Like see that as a bigger picture. I think that's really important, right? Because I mean, imposter syndrome is a real thing and it's also
Hmm.
bullshit, whatever. But I think it's good that you're able to like pull back a little bit. I aspire. I think I definitely struggle with that. I'm like, don't zoom in, don't zoom in, don't zoom in. Or, someone will come in to get another tattoo and I'll look. And sometimes I'm like, oh, want to touch up on that one? And sometimes I'm like, oh, yes, the fuck I did. Like, that looks fucking good. Okay, okay.
Right on, right
But,
on. And 7 years is considerable, but I'm at 15 years, and
mm,
honestly, I still feel that way, right?
yeah.
And I used to have this feeling. I think it's kind of gone away now, but for the first probably 7 years of my career, I was like, I did the tattoo. The person got up from the chair. They liked it. I
Mm-hmm,
wrapped it up.
mm-hmm,
In my mind, after I wrapped it up, the tattoo basically melted into a mess.
mm,
And so basically, when the person walked out of my shop, I was like, well, they can't see it right now, but actually, it's a mess under there. Like, what
mm-hmm,
is going to happen? And then I'd be
mm-hmm.
like, I wouldn't actually literally wait for them to
Yeah,
give me a call and be like, what the fuck did you do on me? But
yeah.
I had the feeling that like it wasn't great and like they're
Mm-hmm,
gonna remove the bandage and be like, it's not that great or something,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
And it never really happened. But
right,
I had
right.
this feeling that the second it was out of my sight, it just like melted together or
Oh,
something,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
I mean,
yeah.
I will be glad that dissipated somewhat with me, right? But there are still some times when I'm like, fuck, like why do I do this line of work? Like I don't really feel like I'm any good at this. What the fuck? And then again, then the next day, like especially a repeat client comes in and you check out the tattoo and you're like, oh shit. And it also helps when they take care of their tattoo. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
thank you for moisturizing your shit.
Well, also, I mean, you just got to see like right because you know that the value of the experience isn't just the art. Like
Yeah,
as
yeah.
I have a gorgeous giant thigh piece that was done by a
Mm,
dude who treated me like I was a walking wallet. Like he didn't want to talk to me, he didn't
mm,
acknowledge me in any really way.
mm.
He didn't let me have any say in design. It's beautiful, but like my association with it is not great. I would never
Right,
go back to him.
right.
And then I have pieces from this piece I have on my arm is these stars.
Oh yeah, I love these.
They were done by somebody who's kind of semi-professional, who like
Uh-huh.
tattoos on the side. I don't think they really consider themselves like
Mm.
well, I mean, they're an amazing human, right? But like they
Ah,
have a lot of other sides to them. They're not
yeah,
like working in a shop
yeah.
every day, right?
Okay.
And it's a hand poke, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
so beautiful. And it's not, there's parts of it that fell out, but I just like
Oh,
I'm so in love with it, even though this
yeah.
person is a lot their work is a lot simpler than like what I have on my
Mm-hmm.
thigh.
Yeah.
But it's like they're
Oh yeah.
amazing. They came through and they tattooed in my shop for a couple of days, and I just thought
Mm.
they're just like such a cool human and a
Mm.
writer, and I'm just stoked that I have this piece on my arm from them.
Yes,
You know,
that's what I'm here for. And I know, like, I mean, I would imagine if some tattooers or maybe even clients or something would hear like certain parts or maybe this part of this conversation be like, oh fuck, here we go, whatever. But I am not saying or advocating that like any of us do like are out here like purposely doing like shitty work. That's not it, right?
we all do the best that we can do, which might not be as good as the next person. It might
Or
be better
just
than the
different than
previous
the next
person, or
person,
just
right?
different.
Right.
Yeah,
Just it's just a
totally.
different skill
Yeah.
set, different goals, whatever. And my take again, go ahead, folks, come for me. But like my thought, and I've talked to my kids about this, but as they've like gotten older, they both like to make artwork, and you could see at this age, maybe around 7 or something, when things start to get more critical in their brain, and they're like, I'm going to crinkle up this piece of paper because this doesn't look right anymore. I'm like, well, what? Like, what is it about that doesn't look right? And so this is a thing that I always keep in my head, whatever, is like, for me, if I think it's just like the way that I make artwork or even the stuff that I like. If I wanted like realism, um, I would take a picture. And I think that's fantastic that people master things like realism and whatever. That's absolutely beautiful. But for me, I am much more interested in the way that the artist interprets a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's this artist in Ann Arbor here. I was just in Ann Arbor for a guest spot, and it wasn't at this person's shop, but I like her work a lot, Janet Nelson. And we haven't met in person. I haven't even been tattooed by her, but people will give her an idea and just say, I want to relay these words. And I don't even know if you show her a picture or anything. And then she comes up with
Mm-hmm.
something. And a lot of times it's very like symbolic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so beautiful to me. Maybe that's not everybody's style. I don't know, whatever the fuck. But
I
like,
do that shit all the time. I love that shit.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's
Like
so
somebody
beautiful. I'm just
brings a
so
poem.
interested. Oh yeah, that's so nice to me. And for sure, like show image references that will help me to get an idea. But if you don't have that, or even if you do and you can give me a few words of like, what is the feel of this, that is really helpful to me because not everyone knows how to like describe art or describe style, and not everyone's just up for some ready-mades or
Mhm.
whatever. But I'm so interested in the way that the artist sort of like, I don't know, like almost translates what they see, or like their thoughts or the way that they put things down on paper, and that, or on skin, and that to me is much more meaningful, right? So yes, same. I
Mhm.
have some like very technically beautiful tattoos, I guess, like in skill set or whatever, but the experience was not great. And to be honest, I could give a fuck about those tattoos. And I will never like position myself again to find someone just because their work is beautiful. I don't give a fuck. Like there are so many people that can do also beautiful work and have like
Mhm.
good personalities, even if you want a silent appointment. I mean, beyond like the communication and the consent and all of that, if otherwise folks want quiet, that's okay too. But a lot of times people do like want conversation. I don't know. I feel like it's um
But
I just
that's
don't
what I'm
give.
saying is,
Yeah.
it's like you turn that back to yourself, like whether or not you feel like you're a great tattoo artist, you
Ah.
give a great experience, right? The people
Mm.
coming back to you.
Well, I
So
guess
your
that's the goal.
value,
Yeah.
yeah, and your value is you're providing the experience that nobody else
Mm.
can provide.
Mm. I just
And that's
yeah, it
it's
feels so great, right? Like I
mhm.
love like, do you know those moments where when I think about things like butt tattoos, right? Like I don't think butt tattoos are very easy to do in a technical way. It doesn't even matter to me like what the body type is at all. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They're not easy to do, but it's one of my favorite things to do because literally 10 times out of 10, someone looks in the mirror and they're like, oh shit, look at me. Oh my God. You know what I'm going to do this summer? Wear a swimsuit. And I'm like, well, the fuck yes. I hope you do anyhow, but I love those moments of being a part of that and being like, yes, the fuck you did. Or someone being like, I don't like to show my knees, or this thing has always bothered me or whatever. And being a part of that is like, oh, I mean, yes, you're right. There are times when I'm like, oh no, I had to block a client for being like very sexually inappropriate, and that sucks. But there are other moments where I'm like, come on, come on. Like, we get to do
Mhm.
this. All
We
right.
get to do this. We get
Mm,
to, right? We
mm,
don't we get to.
yeah.
I was trying to think of like when have I done a butt tattoo? I love that you love butt tattoos. I've done butt tattoos as part of a thigh tattoo, like
Mm.
a tendril going up and kind of
Oh,
around the
that's
side
cool.
of the glute,
Yeah.
but butt tattoos.
Oh, I just love them. Again, because
What do you put on them? What do you put
oh,
on the
I
butt?
mean, it's been a lot of like floral work. I had someone once that had like also like well, I guess it was partially floral, like an orange, like an orange and orange
Mm,
blossoms and whatever else. But it
mm.
tends to be a lot of floral work. There have been a few things where someone recently, Grand Rapids happens to be like a pretty, I don't know. There's like a lot of Christian Reform people here. I didn't know that until I moved here. My auntie that I moved here for was a Quaker, so had always been around her friends when I came up here, and then I moved up here and I was like, why the fuck is everything closed on Sundays? I was like, oh god. All right, so there are like lots of religious like I don't know like connotations. Hold on, I totally lost my train of thought. This is part of
You're talking
aging.
about butt
Oh,
tattoos.
thanks. Yep, got it. Thank you. This client came in, regular client. She's super fucking funny, and she's had her own I guess I would say like maybe religious trauma or whatever. And she's like, You know how sometimes you will make just like a heart with like a little banner and your handwriting that just says like no or nope or burn it down or whatever. And she's like, could you? I want one that says God's favorite and I want you to put it on my ass.
Nice.
I was
Maybe
like,
that's
oh,
why, you know what? That makes total sense. You do more butt tattoos because it's like a whole Christian thing with like being spanked and like it's a whole thing. Like the butt is much more symbolic, probably for your part of the country.
it might be. I mean, there's also folks who were just like, I've had people, oh, this one I did, it was actually matching on both sides. And it was like more like freehand leaves. I love to do those too
Yeah.
because you can like follow the flow of someone's body. You can have something pre-drawn, but like, like it doesn't always work for folks. You want it to like really suit them and fit them. So this one
Hmm.
client, I did like these like kind of freehand vines down the side. They were coordinating, not like mirrored or whatever. And did the whole tattoo. Had a great time chatting with her. She was super funny, and we had great conversation. And then afterwards, she was like, I feel really excited about wearing. I think it was like something like a swimsuit or something in the summertime that showed them off more. And she was like, I think because of like religious upbringing, always felt very shamed about her body and whatever. And so she was like, this is just kind of helping me even a little bit more. I mean, there are times when
Hmm.
I kind of wish that I could do that on my own, right? Like, but here we are, right? Like tattooing
Yeah.
is helpful, right?
But it's like making sense to me that you do more butt
Mm.
tattoos than I do. California just has a different crowd, you know? And also the other
Yeah.
thing is, I remember when I was coming up in tattoo world and like the dykes around me were all leather
Mm.
dykes, and I grew up in kind of the leather community.
Mm.
And my an ex lover of mine who was a tattooer, she had her whole entire body basically tattooed except for butt cheeks. And it was because she liked impact play on her butt. And she was like, I don't want to mess up tattoo work on my butt if I like, break skin when I'm getting cane. So, I think that kind of stuck with me as
Yeah.
like, okay,
And I
that
don't
makes
know too,
sense.
like if I do them a few times and I can't, like, obviously there's gonna be plenty of times when people are like, you can't have a picture of that or whatever. And other folks are like, oh yeah, I don't want my face in it, but absolutely put my ass in there. Like I'll stick it out even farther. And then once people see that, and then I'll get more requests
Nice.
or whatever. So
Darlings, I am pausing our conversation here in the butt tattoo zone. The entire conversation was 2.5 hours long, so I had to split it up into two parts so none of you would fall asleep while listening to it. I am just kidding. It is absolutely not a sleepy conversation, but it can get a little heavy at times. The last couple of weeks, I released 2 solo episodes, and the next couple of weeks, this week and next week, will be the 2 parts of the episode with Sarah, Sarah's son. Please enjoy and tell me what you think. I just think this human is amazing, and I'm really happy to bring this conversation to you. Thank you so much.